It was early October 1987, and the crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke through the quiet streets of a small Ohio town. John Miller, a 42-year-old mechanic, had been planning a weekend getaway with his wife Emily and their two kids, Lucas, 10, and Abby, 7, for months. The plan was simple: a drive through the rolling hills outside town, stopping at scenic overlooks, and camping under the stars for a night. Neighbors remember seeing the family pack their Bay's station wagon meticulously, making sure the kids had blankets, snacks, and flashlights. It seemed like any other ordinary weekend, full of laughter and family chatter. As the morning sun rose, the Millers waved goodbye to friends and family. Emily, a school teacher, gave Lucas and Abby one last reminder to stay buckled up, while John made a quick check under the hood of the car. They drove off slowly, the crunch of leaves under the tires echoing through the empty streets. Several neighbors watched the car disappear around the bend of Maple Avenue, waving without expecting anything out of the ordinary. But as the day wore on, what should have been a cheerful weekend turned ominously quiet. By late afternoon, worry began to creep in. The Millers were supposed to check in by phone around 4 p.m., a routine they followed on every trip. But the line stayed silent. Emily's sister, living just a few miles away, tried calling repeatedly, growing increasingly uneasy with each unanswered ring. Friends who had planned to meet the family at a small roadside diner never saw them. The clock ticked past dinner time, and the sense of unease in the town began to spread. No accidents had been reported on any highways leading out of town. No sightings of the station wagon had been confirmed. It was as though the family had evaporated into thin air. The local police were notified by a neighbor who had grown suspicious of the silence. Officers began their initial investigation by driving the familiar roads the Millers might have taken, searching forests, rivers, and abandoned barns along the way. They knocked on doors, asked travelers, and even combed through gas stations, but the trail went cold almost immediately. There were no tire tracks in unusual places, no signs of struggle, no witnesses who remembered seeing them beyond the morning drive. The disappearance was baffling, raising questions in everyone's mind. Had the Millers simply decided to vanish, or had something far more sinister occurred? As night fell over the town, an unsettling stillness settled in. The community, once cheerful and tight-knit, felt the first prick of fear that something had gone horribly wrong. Streetlights flickered over empty driveways, and whispers began to circulate at the local diner and grocery store. Where could they have gone? Some speculated it was a simple accident, others feared foul play, while a few older residents shivered at the thought of darker, inexplicable forces at work. By the time search parties were organized at first light the next day, the town already sensed the beginning of a mystery that would stretch for decades, leaving an entire community haunted by the sudden and unexplained disappearance of the Miller family. From the very beginning, the disappearance of the Miller family baffled local law enforcement. Detectives assigned to the case pored over every scrap of information they could find, starting with the family's last known movements. Officers interviewed neighbors, friends, and co-workers, trying to reconstruct the morning of the drive, but everyone's memories were scattered and incomplete. The route the Millers were likely to take through the countryside seemed simple, yet it yielded no clues. No eyewitnesses could recall seeing the station wagon after it disappeared around the bend that morning, and the quiet rural roads offered little evidence for investigators to follow. Within days, the search expanded. Police organized patrols along highways, backroads, forests, and rivers, hoping to find a trace of the family's car, belongings, or even footprints. They scoured abandoned barns, small cabins, and the surrounding farmland, but each lead quickly ran cold. Highway cameras, primitive by modern standards, revealed nothing unusual. There were no signs of a car breakdown, no suspicious hitchhikers, no reports of strangers interacting with the Millers. Every tip that came in, from distant towns or passing truckers, dissolved into nothing. The harder investigators looked, the more it felt as though the family had vanished into thin air. Detectives also explored the possibility of foul play. Was this the work of a criminal, someone targeting the family specifically? They questioned neighbors for rivalries, financial troubles, or strange behavior leading up to the trip. Yet nothing concrete emerged. The Millers were an ordinary, well-liked family. There were no enemies, no debts, no apparent reason someone would want to harm them. Even the local news, which initially covered the case extensively, began running out of new material. Frustration grew in the department, as one by one, potential leads failed to point to anything substantial. Despite the lack of evidence, investigators refused to give up. They examined every missing person case in the surrounding counties for possible connections, hoping for a pattern. Reports of abandoned cars, suspicious campsites, or people seen wandering the woods were cross-checked, yet nothing seemed related. Families who had similar disappearances were contacted, but most were unrelated, leaving the Miller case as an isolated, chilling mystery. The sense of urgency among the officers increased with each passing week, but the trail remained frustratingly cold, and the town began to feel a creeping unease that something far darker might have been involved. As the investigation stretched into months, police began documenting rumors and strange sightings that had surfaced in the area. Locals whispered about flickering lights near the forests at night, distant screams carried on the wind, and odd shadows glimpsed along back roads. Detectives, though cautious, recorded these accounts, realizing that while they may not seem credible, they could be pieces of a larger puzzle. Each story, every unexplained detail, became a small thread in the growing web of mystery surrounding the Miller family. By the time the first anniversary of their disappearance approached, the investigation had become a haunting reminder that the family's fate was not only unknown, it might be more terrifying than anyone dared to imagine. As the years passed, the disappearance of the Miller family became a lingering shadow over the small Ohio town. Time did little to ease the uncertainty or the fear that had settled in. The initial shock faded, but the questions only grew darker. Lucas would have been in his 40s, Abby in her late 30s, and the idea that the family might still be out there somewhere, or worse, lost forever, haunted neighbors and friends alike. Every autumn, when the leaves began to fall, townspeople recalled that fateful drive, a chilling reminder of a family that vanished without a trace. The community tried to move on, but the mystery refused to die. Over the years, countless rumors circulated, some plausible, some bordering on the supernatural. Locals claimed that on quiet nights, you could hear faint cries or children laughing somewhere near the old woods that lined the countryside. Others swore they saw strange lights flickering near the abandoned quarry where the family might have traveled. The Miller disappearance became more than a police case. It transformed into a legend, whispered from generation to generation, a story parents told their children as a warning. Never wander too far, for the world might hide horrors beyond your sight. Despite the rumors, the authorities kept the case technically open, though leads were few and far between. Every so often, someone reported a sighting, a car resembling the Miller's station wagon seen miles from town, or a stranger asking questions about the family. Each tip sparked a brief flurry of activity, but ultimately, every trail ran cold. Investigators were left with nothing more than the unsettling feeling that the family's disappearance was not random, that there was something deliberate and calculated behind it, something meant to remain hidden. Meanwhile, the town itself changed. New families moved in, old ones moved out, and yet the story of the Millers remained etched into the local consciousness. Some residents became obsessed, patrolling the roads and woods at night, hoping to stumble upon evidence. Others avoided the area entirely, fearing that the place where the Millers vanished had become cursed. Even decades later, people who had grown up with the story described a lingering chill whenever they passed the winding roads and the dense forests where the family was last seen. The fear was subtle but pervasive, a quiet anxiety that hovered over the town like a dark cloud. What made the mystery even more unsettling was the sheer lack of closure. Unlike other missing person cases, where suspects could be questioned or bodies found, the Millers left no clues, no messages, no sign of struggle. Each passing year only deepened the sense of dread. People wondered if the family had been trapped somewhere, watching time slip by while no one knew. Others feared something far worse, that the Millers had stumbled into something unspeakably evil, something buried beneath the calm surface of the countryside. With every rumor, every shadow in the night, the town's collective imagination filled in gaps with visions far darker than reality, and the family's disappearance became an enduring nightmare that no one could escape. It wasn't until 2023, over 3 decades after the Miller family vanished, that a breakthrough finally shook the town to its core. A group of urban explorers, young and adventurous, had been wandering near the outskirts of the old quarry, drawn by rumors of hidden caves and forgotten tunnels. What began as a casual adventure quickly turned chilling when one of them stumbled upon a small, nearly invisible opening partially covered by dirt and fallen leaves. At first, they thought it was just a shallow cave, the kind you'd find on a weekend hike. But something about the way the entrance had been deliberately concealed set off alarms in the back of their minds. The explorers didn't go in alone. They called local authorities, unsure of what they had found. Police officers and forensic specialists arrived within hours, cautiously inspecting the area. The entrance, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, led into a network of narrow tunnels that seemed to stretch farther than anyone had imagined. It was clear that this was not a natural formation. Someone had constructed this underground maze intentionally, carving passages and reinforcing walls as if planning for secrecy and durability. The sight sent chills through everyone present. The possibility that the Miller family's fate might be linked to this hidden underground structure instantly became a haunting reality. As excavation teams began their work, every step deeper into the tunnels revealed something more unsettling. The walls were etched with strange symbols and markings, some faded, others fresh enough to suggest recent human activity. Makeshift shelves held remnants of items that had been long forgotten: old cans, weathered clothing, and what looked like crude bedding. Even without finding the Millers, it was evident that this underground system had been used for purposes that were anything but innocent. The scale of the tunnels suggested premeditation, a place carefully designed to hide, trap, or even imprison. News of the discovery spread rapidly. Journalists descended on the town, cameras capturing the cautious entry into the tunnels. Residents who had lived with decades of fear and speculation felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that a clue had finally emerged, terror at the implications of what lay beneath the earth. Each report sparked renewed conversations about the Millers, about the strange lights and eerie sounds that had long haunted the forests. For the first time in 36 years, it seemed as though the mystery might finally be unraveled. But the truth, everyone feared, could be far worse than anyone imagined. Forensic teams worked tirelessly, meticulously documenting every inch of the tunnels. Sensors, lights, and cameras were brought in to map the underground network, revealing hidden chambers and concealed compartments that seemed almost impossibly well hidden. Each discovery increased the tension. Items linked to missing persons, traces of food, and objects that had been untouched for decades hinted at horrors frozen in time. Even the air inside the tunnels carried a heavy, musty scent, thick with the weight of years of secrets kept in the darkness. The deeper they went, the more the investigators realized that the Miller family's disappearance had never been random. It had been orchestrated, and the tunnels held the key to understanding a decades-old nightmare. As forensic teams delved deeper into the tunnels, the air grew colder, heavier, and filled with a musty scent that seemed almost alive with secrets. Then came the moment that would haunt the town forever. Beneath layers of soil, dust, and debris, the remains of the Miller family were found. The bodies were arranged unnervingly, almost as if someone had deliberately positioned them to remain undisturbed. Even after 36 years, it was clear that the family had not wandered into danger by accident. The precision of their concealment hinted at a horrifying premeditation that made investigators shiver. Alongside the remains, personal belongings were discovered, items that seemed frozen in time. A worn family photo album, its pages yellowed but intact, revealed snapshots of birthdays, vacations, and ordinary family life, now forever tinged with tragedy. Lucas's toy truck lay in a corner, covered in dust, as if he had just set it down moments before vanishing. Emily's scarf, delicately folded, appeared untouched by time. Each object told a silent story of lives abruptly stolen, leaving a chilling sense that the Millers' final moments had been recorded not by witnesses, but by the very earth itself. Investigators began to examine the surrounding tunnels more meticulously. The walls were lined with disturbing clues, makeshift markings that hinted at fear, struggle, and perhaps even captivity. Some sections appeared to have been intentionally blocked, concealing chambers from even the most thorough search. Traces of food, water, and rudimentary bedding suggested that whoever had placed the family here had intended them to remain hidden for an extended period. The reality became increasingly impossible to ignore. The Millers had not simply disappeared. They had been deliberately trapped, hidden away in a carefully constructed underground nightmare. The forensic team also uncovered evidence that pointed to a chilling timeline. Though decades had passed, it seemed the family's final hours had been painstakingly orchestrated. Small objects, like a partially eaten sandwich, a child's drawing, and personal items left in plain view, created a hauntingly intimate glimpse into their last moments. The deeper investigators went, the more it became clear that this was not a crime of opportunity. It was methodical, cruel, and terrifyingly precise. Each discovery intensified the sense of dread that had been quietly growing in the town for more than 30 years. Perhaps the most horrifying realization came when the investigators noticed the structure itself. The tunnels had been reinforced, sections carefully hidden with dirt and rocks, as though someone had anticipated a search hundreds of feet above ground. Every corner seemed to whisper a story of secrecy and fear, and every shadow suggested that the Millers' final moments had been watched by unseen eyes. The combination of the family's preserved belongings, the calculated concealment of their remains, and the eerie markings in the walls created a nightmare frozen in time, one that no one could have predicted, and one that would forever haunt the community that had spent decades searching for answers. As investigators pieced together the evidence from the tunnels, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The scale of the underground network was far beyond anything they had initially imagined. The tunnels weren't random. They had been meticulously planned and reinforced, as if someone had intended to use them for purposes that were secret, sinister, and long-term. Every hidden chamber, every carefully blocked passage, suggested forethought and calculation. The realization hit investigators like a punch to the gut. The Miller family had not stumbled into a natural disaster or a random accident. They had walked into a trap. Further examination of the tunnels revealed chilling signs of past activity. Scattered throughout were remnants that hinted at other lives touched by the same darkness, personal items, faded notes, and tools that could only have been used to confine or manipulate. Marks etched into the walls, cryptic symbols, and signs of effort to reinforce sections of the tunnels suggested the work of someone methodical and cruel. Investigators began to suspect that this underground system had been used for decades, and the Millers' disappearance was only one chapter in a series of unspeakable events. Local records and historical accounts added another layer of dread. The area surrounding the quarry had long been associated with strange disappearances, rumors of illegal operations, and whispers of people vanishing without explanation. Older residents remembered unexplained lights at night, strange visitors, and eerie noises that never had a clear source. When the tunnels were linked to these past accounts, it became clear that the horrors had been hidden in plain sight, beneath the community's very feet. The Millers had unknowingly become part of a long, dark legacy that no one had ever fully understood. The most chilling revelation came from forensic evidence within the tunnels. Analysis suggested that the Millers had been trapped alive for a period before their deaths. Traces of food, water, and makeshift bedding indicated that they had not been killed immediately. They had been confined, isolated, and left to endure a nightmare in silence. The notion that a family of 4 could have spent their final hours in such conditions was almost too horrifying to grasp. Each discovery deepened the sense of calculated cruelty, forcing investigators and townspeople alike to confront the unimaginable. Someone had intended this suffering, and it had been executed with cold precision. Even more disturbing were the subtle clues that pointed to the perpetrator's knowledge of the town and its history. The tunnels were hidden in areas that were both remote and well-known, allowing access without drawing attention. Whoever had orchestrated this had intimate knowledge of the terrain, the community, and perhaps even law enforcement practices. The dark truth settled like a weight over the investigation. The Miller family had not just been victims, they had been prey, and the person responsible had anticipated every possible way to keep them hidden, erase their existence, and manipulate time itself to conceal their crime. The more investigators uncovered, the clearer it became that the horror ran deeper than anyone had ever imagined. The shocking discovery of the Miller family's remains sent waves of fear and grief through the small Ohio town. Residents who had grown up hearing whispers about the family's disappearance were forced to confront the grim reality. The story they had treated as a local legend was horrifyingly true. Streets that once seemed safe now carried an undercurrent of unease, and ordinary locations, the forest paths, the old quarry, even familiar backroads, took on a sinister quality. Parents held their children tighter, and neighbors whispered about the darkness that had lingered unseen for decades. Local authorities faced intense scrutiny as the story gained national attention. News crews descended on the town, cameras capturing the cautiously monitored tunnels and the painstaking work of forensic teams. Investigators shared what they could, but many details remained classified, leaving both residents and the wider public to imagine the horrors that had unfolded underground. The town, once quiet and sleepy, now felt like the center of a nightmare, with everyone questioning how such evil could exist so close to home, hidden in plain sight for 36 years. Counselors and support workers were brought in to help residents cope with the emotional fallout. Families who had been connected to the Millers, as well as those who had grown up hearing the story, struggled to reconcile the past with the shocking revelation. Fear mingled with sorrow, and stories of strange sightings, unexplained noises, and shadows glimpsed near the woods gained renewed attention. People began sharing their own experiences, wondering if the Millers had been the only victims, or if the darkness beneath the town had claimed more over the decades. As investigators continued their work, they discovered additional chambers in the tunnels, revealing that the system was even more extensive than initially believed. Each new find added layers of horror, old remnants, abandoned personal items, and signs of human activity carefully hidden for decades. The realization that the tunnels had been used systematically left the community grappling with the terrifying possibility that this had been a deliberate, long-running operation. Questions of accountability and justice loomed large, but the perpetrator, or perpetrators, remained elusive, their identities a haunting mystery that left investigators frustrated and the town unsettled. Even after the tunnels were sealed and the immediate investigation concluded, the impact on the town endured. The Miller family's disappearance and the horrifying discovery became a permanent scar on the community's collective memory. Every fall, when the leaves turned and the wind whispered through the trees, residents recalled the tragedy, the hidden tunnels, and the lives stolen beneath their very feet. Conversations turned to hushed warnings, and a pervasive unease lingered, a reminder that some horrors, no matter how deeply buried, never truly fade. As the dust settled over the tunnels and the forensic teams finished their work, one truth became painfully clear. The Miller family's disappearance was never random. It had been deliberate, calculated, and hidden beneath the earth for decades, leaving generations to live in uneasy ignorance. Even now, as the town tries to heal, the shadow of those tunnels, and the horror they contained, lingers. No arrests have been made, and the perpetrator remains a mystery. Some say that whoever orchestrated this vanished long ago, leaving only echoes of their crimes. Others fear that the darkness that claimed the Millers could still be out there, waiting, watching, and capable of striking again. The town has learned a terrifying lesson. Evil can hide in the most ordinary places, and sometimes, what lies beneath the surface is far more horrifying than what you can see above. The Miller family's story is now a permanent scar on the community, a grim reminder that life can change in an instant, and that some secrets refuse to stay buried. Their lives, frozen in time beneath the soil, are a testament to the terrifying reality that even the most peaceful towns can conceal unimaginable horrors. And so, when you walk through quiet streets, drive down lonely roads, or wander near the edge of a forest, remember this story. Because sometimes, what is lost is not gone, it is waiting, quietly, beneath the earth, for someone to uncover it, and for the world to finally see the horrors that were kept in the shadows for decades.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.